Episode 2 of Building Oblivion PSP brings us into the month of July in 2006. If we recall back to the first episode, the team at Climax had transitioned away from the first submitted build and had begun working on the game proper. At that point, the first few levels had been whiteboxed, but little had been done beyond that to make it look nice. Be sure to stay tuned until the end of this episode for a bit of an amazing discovery, even if it's not quite ready to be shown yet. Oh, and we've hit 10,000 subscribers yet again. Thanks, YouTube. The next build jumps from June 30th, 2006 to July 20th, 2006. The work that the artist had been doing was beginning to be implemented into the game. The Ralta prison area is seen here, taking a familiar shape for anyone who has played the leaked builds. This first area is one of the key areas to watch throughout the game's early development, as it changes almost on a monthly basis. The door takes quite a while to be unlocked to allow the player out, but eventually it does open. Notice that there aren't any friendly NPC models. Instead, the game uses the Daedra model for just about any humanoid NPC. Most NPCs try to follow a basic path of some kind, but they cannot be interacted with or killed. Most of the time, the player's hands don't even show up when attacking anyway. As we make our way up through the level, we will arrive at one of the other rooms that changes pretty often. The chapel room. There is no nice light shafts, although rain does pour through the ceiling, which looks pretty nice. Our friendly soldier is, again, a Daedra model, where he holds a rusty key that allows us to access the next area. Or rather, it would if transitions loaded properly, which they don't. A few of these early Ralta levels have textures, although as we move through the zones, the ones at the end noticeably don't. If you're wondering why my sound is a bit buzzy, it's because I'm dumping a bunch of data tapes full of data. Fortunately, I don't have any place else to do it or record audio, so we're stuck with a bit of buzzing in the audio today. Sorry. The Oblivion gate at the top of the building is laid out here, although it lacks any effect. The Moonguard Oblivion gate areas are also whiteboxed in this build, although there are no enemies or any structure of any kind. Fast forward a week to the July 26th build, and we'll find mostly small bug fixes. The gate now opens much more quickly, but most of the files in this build are the same as the previous build, indicating that more work was done under the hood of the game, rather than on things that we can easily see. As a bit of a bonus, since it took so long to make this second episode, I thought I'd show yet another build, August 1st, 2006. As I mentioned earlier, the first rooms of the game change often, and this build is no exception. A light shaft pierces through a now broken wall in your jail cell. Friendly NPC models have been implemented in some areas, and the chapel room has gained its big, flashy window, with the rusty key now being a chapel key instead. More work was done on the engine too, of course. The player can now move between zones, although due to the nature of the build running over a network, it isn't necessarily the quickest nor a flawless process. Many more areas throughout Ralta are textured, some even providing some simple dialogue to the player. In addition, more Ralta zones have been implemented, including this cave area. Perhaps one of the biggest jumps forward is the Oblivion gate. It now has its fancy fiery effect, although the Moonguard Oblivion zones are untouched over the earlier builds. If you were wondering what the menu looked like, it is still fairly simple as seen here. Throughout this time period, it was mostly unchanged other than some minor fixes to the font. As I wrap this second episode up, I realized I nearly forgot about that little thing I talked about at the beginning. Located right next to the July PSP builds of this game are two PlayStation 2 builds. It is unclear for what purpose Climax exported these PS2 builds, whether it was just a checkmark that exported both builds, although I think that's unlikely due to it happening twice a week apart, or perhaps they explored the possibility of a PS2 version of Oblivion Travels. I know renderware allows such things to happen, so I don't want to get too ahead of myself, but that would have been an amazing thing to see. Unfortunately, the builds are currently non-working. I believe they need a PS2 development tool, which I do not currently have. In fact, these PSP builds will only run on a PSP development tool right now, and not off an ISO in a custom firmware PSP. The second I get one of those PS2 tools, you know there will be a follow-up video and hopefully some PS2 Oblivion Travels video. Hit that subscribe button, like us, yada yada, but do check us out on Patreon at patreon.com/pdponline. I've lost track of some of the new subscribers, but rest assured they will be recognized soon. Thank you very much for watching.